The lock didn't turn. That's how I found out. Standing on the porch of a house I'd been paying for over a decade, holding a key that no longer worked, staring at my own fishing rods tossed onto the wet grass like garbage. My name is on the deed. My name is on the mortgage. My money built every square foot of that place. And my mother-in-law decided it belonged to her other daughter now. I'm Victor. I'm 52 years old. 3 months ago, I made a decision that burned my entire extended family to the ground. And I'd do it again before my coffee gets cold. Because when you spend 10 years writing checks for people who see your generosity as their birthright, the only thing left to do is stop writing and let gravity do the rest. To understand how I ended up on that sidewalk watching strangers carry my belongings out of my own property, you need to know who I am. I've never inherited a dime. Everything I have, I built. I work in logistics, supply chain management for a mid-size firm out of Charlotte. I'm the guy who wakes up at 4:30, hits the gym by 5, and is on the road to the warehouse before most people have poured their first cup. I'm not flashy. I drive a 10-year-old F-150 that I maintain myself. I keep my finances tight, my credit clean, and my word solid. That's the kind of man I am. That's the kind of man they took advantage of. I married Elena 15 years ago. She was quiet, steady, the kind of woman who'd read on the couch while I watched football, and neither of us needed to say a word. I loved that about her. What I didn't love, what I should have seen as a red flag from day one, was her mother, Barbara. If guilt were a currency, that woman would be a billionaire. She had this way of making you feel like every good thing in your life was something you owed her. Every family dinner, every holiday, there was this undercurrent. You have more than us, and that's not fair. About 10 years ago, when my business income really started stabilizing and I had some real cash flow for the first time in my life, I made what I thought was a smart move. I bought a second property, a solid 3-bedroom with a big yard on Meadowbrook Drive, in a neighborhood that was growing fast. My retirement plan, my exit strategy. The idea was simple: pay it off over 15 years, then either sell it for a profit or rent it out and live off the income when I was done working. Clean, logical, smart. But then Barbara started with the tears. She couldn't stay in her little apartment anymore. Her knees, her back, the stairs were killing her. Elena joined in. "It would be such a kind thing to do, Victor. She'll take care of the place, and it's still yours. It's still an investment." I gave in. That was the first brick in my own prison wall. For 9 years, I paid every cent of that mortgage: property taxes, homeowner's insurance, the plumber when the pipes froze in January, the landscaper who trimmed the rose bushes Barbara loved so much. I even paid for the new kitchen countertop she wanted, Brazilian granite, $12,000. I didn't live there. I never slept a single night in that house. But my money slept there every month like clockwork. $2,140, the 5th of every month, automatic withdrawal. I watched the principal go down and the equity go up, and I told myself it was still mine. The papers said so. Meanwhile, there was Sandra, Elena's younger sister, 40 years old and still living like she was 22. She couldn't hold a job for more than a few months. Always the boss's fault, always the economy, always bad luck. She bounced from apartment to apartment, from boyfriend to boyfriend, and every time she crashed, guess whose wallet opened? Elena would send her money behind my back. I knew. I let it slide because I didn't want the fight. That was my second mistake. When you let people steal small, you're training them to steal big. About a year ago, Sandra got pregnant. The father disappeared before the test results were dry, and suddenly every family dinner, every phone call, every conversation was about poor Sandra and her baby, poor Sandra who has nothing. I'd sit there eating my steak, listening, nodding, watching the looks that passed between Elena and her mother like a silent conspiracy. I noticed, but I was arrogant enough to think I was still in control. I had the deed. I had the bank statements. What could they possibly do? If you've ever felt that false security, the one where you think the paperwork protects you from the people who are supposed to love you, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happened next is the part I still can't believe, and I lived through it. Here's what I've learned about parasites. They don't see your sacrifice as a gift. They see it as an obligation, and once they feel entitled, the only question is how much more they can take. In their minds, the house had stopped being an investment property. It had become the family home. And in their definition of family, Sandra and her unborn baby were in, and I, the man paying for everything, was out. They built their little fantasy on my foundation, and they did it with smiles and coffee and Sunday dinners where Barbara would squeeze my hand and call me the son I never had. That phrase makes me sick now. I was on a business trip, 3 days in Atlanta inspecting a new distribution center. I came home exhausted, neck stiff from the flight, just wanting a shower and 12 hours of sleep. Elena wasn't home. There was a note on the kitchen table, rushed handwriting, nervous energy. "I'm at Mom's, things to sort out." I didn't think twice. I figured Barbara had another one of her imaginary health scares. The next morning I drove out to Meadowbrook to grab some tools from the garage. That's when my world ended. There was a small moving truck in the driveway. I felt my chest tighten, but my logical brain tried to calm me down. Maybe they were replacing furniture. Maybe Barbara was donating old stuff. Then I saw Sandra. She was standing on the porch holding a coffee mug, barking orders at 2 guys hauling boxes. My boxes, my books, my fishing gear, my power tools. Everything was piled on the curb like a yard sale nobody wanted. I walked up to the front door with steady steps. My hands weren't shaking yet. I pulled out my key ring, found the Meadowbrook key, and slid it into the lock. It didn't turn. They had changed the locks. Sandra looked at me, not with shame, not with embarrassment, with defiance. She crossed her arms, still holding that mug, and said in this flat, rehearsed voice, "You don't have any business here anymore, Victor. Mom gave me the house. I need a place for my baby, and you have plenty. Don't be selfish." Then Barbara came out the front door. She wasn't carrying coffee. She was carrying an envelope. She stopped about 6 feet from me with that martyr posture she'd perfected over 60 years. She told me they'd talked to a family friend who's a lawyer, and that since she'd lived there for 10 years, she had rights. She was giving her spot to Sandra because it was the right thing in God's eyes. Elena stepped out behind her mother, my wife, head down. She mumbled something about the baby, about how I could buy another house. My own wife had been part of the ambush. She stood there like a child hiding behind a skirt, letting them hand me the eviction notice from my own property. I saw my fishing rods, the ones I'd spent years collecting, the Shimano I saved up for 2 Christmases to buy, lying in the wet grass. I saw a man I didn't recognize walking down the hallway in boxer shorts. Sandra's new boyfriend apparently already moved in. Walking through the house I'd painted with my own hands the summer before. The humiliation was total. Then Barbara handed me the envelope. Inside were invoices for the new locks, the moving costs, some minor repairs. She said, and I will never forget this, "Since Sandra lives here now, we'd like you to keep paying the mortgage and utilities for a while, until she gets on her feet. It's the least you can do for your family." She wanted me to finance the bed where another man would sleep with my sister-in-law, in the house I bought for my retirement. The audacity, the absolute breathtaking audacity. I said one word, "Understood." My voice came out deeper than I expected, slower. I bent down, picked up one of the garbage bags with my clothes in it, put it in the bed of my truck, and drove away. Barbara smiled. Sandra laughed. Elena tried to touch my arm as I passed, but I stepped away from her hand like it was something dead. They thought they'd won. They had the house, the comfort, and they believed they still had my wallet. What they didn't understand is that the man who built something from nothing knows exactly how to take it apart. That night I checked into a Hampton Inn off the interstate. I sat on the bed with my laptop and pulled up every document, every contract, every clause related to that mortgage. People think revenge is hot. It's not. Real revenge is ice. It's math. It's patience. I called my attorney the next morning, a man named Vargas, cold as a marble slab and twice as reliable. We met at a diner off Route 74. I laid out the papers. He adjusted his glasses and gave me the thinnest smile I've ever seen on a human face. Barbara had no lease, no deed, no legal claim. Sandra was a squatter. We could evict them in 6 months, Vargas said. I shook my head. I don't want a slow eviction. I want the house to stop being a prize and start being a punishment. He leaned back. Then stop feeding the machine. That afternoon, I logged into my banking app and unlinked my checking account from the mortgage payment. I didn't cancel anything dramatically. I just made sure the well was dry when the bank came to drink on the 5th of the month. But that was just the beginning. Every utility on that property, electricity, water, gas, internet, was in my name. I'd been paying all of it by auto debit for a decade. I visited every utility office in person and requested full contract termination, not a suspension, permanent cancellation. "Are you sure?" the woman at the electric company asked. "Reconnection will cost a fortune." I nodded. "There's nobody living there that I need to have lights." Sandra had no job. Barbara's pension barely covered her medication. Elena made maybe $40,000 a year. None of them could cover a $2,100 mortgage plus property taxes plus utilities. They'd stolen a castle and had no idea castles cost a fortune to maintain. Elena started calling, texting, first worried, then confused, then angry. "Victor, where are you? What happened to the electricity? Why is the water off?" I read every message. I let the blue check marks appear so she'd know I saw them. Then I blocked her number. I wanted the silence to do its work. I wanted them sitting in that dark house, turning on each other, wondering which one of them had pushed me too far. The loyalty of thieves dissolves fast when the money stops. I also called a buddy in real estate, asked him to list the property as a distressed sale. I wanted strangers showing up with measuring tapes, walking the yard. I wanted Sandra looking out the window, watching people size up her stolen kingdom, realizing the ship was sinking. Meanwhile, I rebuilt. Clean apartment downtown, small, modern, mine in every sense. I went back to the gym. I slept through the night for the first time in years. Every time guilt tried to creep in, I'd remember my fishing rods in the wet grass and Sandra's laugh on the porch. That memory was my fuel. Vargas called me on day 32. The bank had sent the first delinquency notice. Because it was classified as an investment property, the interest rate was higher and the bank moved faster. They weren't going to wait around. "They're trapped," Vargas told me. "If they can't pay within 60 days, the bank starts foreclosure proceedings." I knew they couldn't pay $60, let alone 60 days of mortgage. Before I tell you how it all came crashing down on them, if this story is hitting you the way it hit me living it, drop a like right now. And if you've ever been the one carrying a family that didn't deserve it, leave a comment. I read every single one. Day 40. I was sitting at a coffee shop 1 block from Meadowbrook, close enough to watch, far enough to stay clean. I saw the electric company truck pull up. A guy in a hard hat climbed the pole and removed the meter in under 10 minutes. Then the water department came and shut the valve at the curb. Sandra came running out of the house like someone had set fire to her hair. She was screaming, waving her phone, still trying to call the number she didn't know was blocked. Barbara arrived a few minutes later, shuffling up the walkway, breathing hard, clutching her chest. They stood on that porch, the porch I paid for, under a sun they couldn't escape because the air conditioning was dead, staring at a future they hadn't planned for because planning was never their strong suit. Then a man in a gray suit walked up to the front door and handed Barbara the foreclosure notice. She grabbed her chest and staggered. Sandra tried to snatch the papers, screaming about her rights. The officer just pointed at the house, then at his folder, and walked away. I decided it was time for my one and only appearance. I walked over slowly. Sandra charged at me with her fists balled up. "You did this," she screamed. "They cut everything off. They're taking the house. You're a monster, Victor." I looked at her with nothing on my face. No anger, no satisfaction, just nothing. I took my hands out of my pockets and spoke with a calm I'd been rehearsing for 40 days. I didn't do anything, Sandra. I simply stopped doing. I stopped paying the electricity you use. I stopped paying the water you drink. I stopped paying the mortgage on the roof you decided to steal from me. You told me this was the family's house. Well, the family can handle the family's bills. I'm not family anymore. You made sure of that. Barbara limped toward me, crying, reaching for the old playbook. Victor, please. Sandra has a baby. You can't be this cruel. Just give us the money to catch up. We'll pay you back. I let out a single dry laugh that stopped her tears midstream. You have nothing to pay me back with, because you never valued what I gave you. You wanted the house? Here it is. The bank will be here for it in 2 weeks. I already negotiated my way out of the debt with a deed in lieu arrangement. My credit will take a hit, but my soul is clean. You have 15 days to get out before the sheriff does it for you. Elena showed up as I was finishing. She froze when she saw the scene. She tried to approach me with those guilt-soaked eyes that arrived about 6 weeks too late. Victor, we can work this out. My mother made a mistake. Don't leave us on the street. I looked at her one last time. It was strange. I felt no love, no hate, just a vast, absolute nothing. Elena, the day you watched them put my clothes in garbage bags and said nothing, that's the day you stopped having a husband. Today you just have a mother and a sister who are going to drag you down with them. Enjoy the house while you still have natural light. It's all you've got left. I turned around, walked to my truck, and drove away. Sandra screamed insults that got smaller in the rearview mirror. Barbara sat down on the porch steps, defeated, watching her freeloading empire evaporate. My revenge wasn't taking the house from them. It was forcing them to face the weight of their own lives without my back to stand on. That was 6 months ago. The divorce went through 3 weeks ago. Quick, clean, clinical. Elena tried to claim half my savings, but Vargas laid out a decade of financial records showing how my money had been funneled into supporting her family. The judge didn't blink. She walked away with what she came in with. Nothing. Sandra's back in a studio apartment on the rough side of town. Her master plan of owning a home without ever earning it lasted exactly 40 days. Barbara's renting a room from a distant cousin who barely tolerates her. No more rose garden, no more granite countertops. The bank foreclosed and sold the house at auction. Sometimes I drive past Meadowbrook and see a new family there. Kids in the yard, a guy washing his truck in the driveway. Good. Someone who actually earned it is enjoying it now. People will say I was cruel, but those people have never had 10 years of their life stolen by smiles and sob stories. I didn't put them on the street. Their greed put them on the street. I just stopped being the safety net they never appreciated. I live alone now, small apartment, 14th floor, downtown. I can see the city lights from my kitchen window. Nobody has a spare key. Nobody is scheming behind my back. Nobody is measuring my success and calculating how much of it they deserve. I sleep 8 hours a night. I eat what I want. I go where I want. I answer to nobody. And for the first time in 15 years, every dollar I earn stays exactly where it belongs, with me. The best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just stepping back and letting people collapse under the weight of the lives they built on your shoulders. Gravity doesn't need a plan, it just needs you to let go. If this story hit you somewhere real, subscribe. I post a new one every week. And if you've been through something like this, if you've ever been the one carrying everyone and getting nothing back, tell me your story in the comments. I promise you, I read every single one. Like this video if you believe people always get what they deserve. And tell me, where are you watching from tonight?